Hello everyone and welcome to a very nice game that was played yesterday in round 5 of the Meltwater Champions Chess Tour finals. It is Quang versus Magnus Carlsen, and even though Magnus is leading the tournament, Quang defeated Jan-Krzysztof Duda in the previous round, and he is playing some excellent chess. So let's see how this one turns out, as this is game 6 of their match. So the match started in the rapid section of the match. Magnus started by winning, then Liem retaliated in the second game. Games 3 and 4 ended in a draw, and this is now the 6th game of Blitz. Magnus won the 5th game, and now he only needs a draw in this game in order to win the match. So let's see what happened, as this a little bit of information does make the game all the more interesting. So Quang opens with pawn to d4. We have knight to f6, c4, we have pawn to e6, and now knight to f3. We have bishop to b4 check, going for the Bogo-Indian defense, bishop to d2, blocking check, and now bishop captures on d2. Queen captures on d2, and now pawn to d5. We have knight to c3, and here Magnus castles kingside. We have pawn to e3, and now b6. Queen to e7 is also possible, but for some reason Magnus decides to go b6, even though b6 has not been played this year. Queen to e7 is the main idea here. b6 is sort of again last year's move, maybe testing if Liem knows his stuff in the Bogo-Indian. So c captures on d5, knight captures on d5, and rook to c1. We have bishop to b7, and now knight captures on d5. And there is one game in the database where queen captures on d5 was played, and it is a nice move. It brings the queen and the bishop to this diagonal. However, it's easy to kick away the queen with bishop to c4. You basically give white a free tempo, and even if queen e4, you can play bishop to d3. So the queen can't really remain on this strong diagonal. So instead, Magnus just plays bishop captures on d5, and it is now, as of move 10, that we have a completely new game. Liem replies with bishop to d3. He wants to play queen to c2 and attack the h7 pawn and the c7 pawn. So that's why Magnus plays h6. You could also play c5. It's important to avoid this double attack. So h6, we have queen to c2, now attacking c7, and just pawn to c5. We have d captures on c5, and this is where the game really takes an interesting turn. What Magnus should play is b captures on c5, or if he wants to be completely safe, this is what he should play, as queen captures on c5 is impossible. You can never capture on c5 because just bishop captures on f3 and also opens up an attack on the bishop on d3. So your pawn on c5, even though it's undefended, it's actually defended by a tactic, and it will survive for a very long time, probably indefinitely. But after d captures on c5, Magnus played knight to d7. He gives up more material for some rapid development, but this is not the best way to go about it. If Liem finds c6, then life for Magnus will be incredibly difficult. Point is that after knight c5, there's b4. Of course, there's b4. Knight captures on d3, queen captures, and now let's say queen e7 goes after the b4 pawn with check, but you don't care about it. You just castle to safety, and then if queen captures on b4, you just continue pushing your pawn, or even better, you push e4. You attack the bishop, and now if queen captures on b4 with check, you play knight to d2. You guard your e4 pawn, as it's now attacked by the queen and by the bishop, and after something like bishop captures on a2, you will play queen c2, and now you are attacking the bishop, and also you have a passed pawn that's ready to go to c7, so this would be a very nice position for white, most likely a winning one. But okay, in the game, he advanced the pawn to e4 instead of pawn to c6, and now Magnus plays bishop to c6. This is Blitz, so of course it's impossible to find all of these ideas. I'm just showing it as positions are really awesome. If you go bishop to b7, might be a little bit better. c6 is impossible because of rook to c8, but now Magnus plays bishop to c6 instead of b7, and now just c captures on b6, and again his bishop is hanging. He plays rook to c8, but now just b captures on a7. He is not afraid of the bishop moving, so queen to a5 with check, queen to c3, and now comes queen captures on a7. Magnus grabs the passed a7 pawn, castles by Liem, and now knight to f6. We have pawn to a3, now preparing to start marching those pawns forward, and Magnus doesn't really have a better move than bishop captures on e4. It's grabbing a pawn as the queen on c3 will be attacked, but even though it's the best move, it doesn't really give black all that much because Liem, of course, gives up the queen. So queen captures on c8, rook captures with check, king to h7, and now rook to d1, defending his bishop here. And after Magnus traded this, captures and captures, queen to b7, rook to c2 was played, and now you have this position where white has 5 pawns, black has 4 pawns, but white also has 2 rooks for the queen. So up a pawn and 2 rooks for the queen is definitely a sufficient compensation, and also the A and B pawns are passed pawns, so if you can start pushing those pawns, even if you have to give up one of them, you should be winning. So it's gonna be hard for Magnus to pull this off. But on the other hand, the queen and the knight make a deadly combo. It's very, very hard to fend off a queen and the knight. A queen and the bishop, not so much, because like if you have a queen and bishop on a light square, on a light diagonal, you put a knight on f3 and the queen and bishop battery is useless. But if you have a queen and knight, it's much, much more difficult to defend. So here, pawn to e5. Magnus now wants to create some pressure, pushing the e and f pawns. Rook to e3 and now knight to g4, attacking and defending. Rook e to e2 and now pawn to e4. We have knight to d2 and pawn to f5. So Magnus starts making progress here. h3 attacks the knight, knight to e5, and now knight to c4. Offers a trade of knights, which Magnus declines, as he should. Knight to d3, and now pawn to b4. Very, very good stuff here. Queen to a6, a beautiful paralyzing move by Magnus. This is this really paralyzes everything, because the rook cannot move because it defends the knight cannot move because it defends the pawn. Pawns cannot move as they will be captured, so there really isn't a good move you can play here. So rook e to d2, and now pawn to f4. We have knight to b2, offering a trade of knights, and this Magnus should decline very loudly. He should play something like knight to e5 or knight to e1, just decline that trade. But Magnus got greedy for the pawn, and he played queen captures on a3. And like we said, you don't need 2 pawns, you only need 1 pawn, and you need a rook behind that pass pawn. And now Liem just captures on d3, which also disconnects the pawns. Now pawn captures on d3 is played, and rook to b2. And now from that position where you had a queen and knight, and like we said, queen and knight are a deadly combo, because for white, that knight didn't really do all that much. For black, that knight was incredible. Now Magnus really doesn't have all that much to try here. I mean, there's a rook on b2, there's a pawn on b4. Liem will just start pushing it, and at some point you will probably have to put a queen behind the pawn if you want to block it. So pawn to f3, Magnus will create some further weaknesses. We have pawn to b5, just starts advancing that pawn. Even though g captures on f3 is objectively better, this is blitz. So queen to a1 with check, king to h2, now comes f captures on g2, king captures, and queen to e1. Now going for some sort of perpetual checking idea. Pawn to b6, and now queen to e4 with check. We have pawn to f3 and queen to g6 with check. We have king to f2, and now there is only one move that doesn't lose the game for Magnus. So feel free to pause the video and try to find it, as I mean, it's a very lovely position, because if you're playing this, if you have seconds on the clock, you know, you're playing blitz, it's very, very hard to imagine that you will spot this. But you are, I imagine, in your own home, very comfortable watching this on your smartphone or on your TV or on your computer, and you will enjoy if you are able to solve this one. So have at it while I give you a couple of seconds. So for those of you who were able to do it, congratulations on spotting that you have to put the queen on the proper diagonal. And for those of you who just want to enjoy the show, it is queen to d6. Magnus did not find this. He played queen to g5, which is similar but not quite. With queen to d6, you gain access to the h2 square, and that is the most important thing here. because now if let's say you play king to g2 to avoid this, then you repeat queen to g6 and you don't care. If you try something else, let's say you advance the pawn to b7, now you have queen to h2 check, and you will always be able to check the white king. For example, if king to e1, you can even checkmate him. Queen to g1 is checkmate, so the king has to go, for example, to e3. Now you play queen to e5 check. If king captures on d3, queen to d6 with check. If you go to c2, then queen to c5 with check. If king to d1, then you repeat queen to g1 check. If the king goes up the board, you play queen to c5 check, and if king to b1, again queen to g1 check, king to a2, and again queen to a7 check. So as long as you continue checking along this diagonal, you will always have a check to give. However, after king to f2, Magnus played queen to g5, which seems like you will be able to check the white king also indefinitely, but not quite. Liem just pushes pawn to b7, and now Magnus realizes what he has done. Queen to c5 with check, king to f1, and now there are no more ideas for black. Unfortunately, you cannot reach the h1 square. In that line that we've shown, you were on h2, so king to h1, you could just continue checking. Even a nice perpetual queen h1, queen h2, queen h1, queen h2, or if the king starts marching, then you just continue checking along this diagonal like we've shown here. You have nothing. Magnus just played queen to e3, and he was in this position on move 42 that Magnus Carlsen resigned the game, as there is nothing more to be done here. Even if you give this check, just king moves king to g2, and that's it. There are no more useful checks. Next move, white gets a queen into the game, but after queen to e3, again just b8 queen. This could be a possible continuation. I know most of you don't need this, but some of you may be new to chess, so you might be interested in how this would be played out. Let's say queen captures on f3 with check, king g1, but now there are no more useful checks. Queen covers the g3 square. You can't play queen to d1. You could capture on h3, but then white would just centralize the queen, and black is pretty much out of moves. If queen g4, rook to g2, and that's it. That's game over. So yeah, very nicely done by Quang Liem, who bounces back in the match. Like I said, first two games were decisive in the rapid section. Magnus won the first one, then Liem retaliated, then game 3 and 4 ended in a draw. Then Magnus wins the first blitz game, and then Liem retaliates in the second blitz game, which forced Armageddon, where Magnus had the white pieces, and then in the Armageddon, Magnus won with the white pieces. It was a very nice game. Liem basically just tried really hard to play for a draw. He even gave up some material just to hold onto a draw from the very start, but it didn't work out all that well. So Magnus wins, just not the full 3 points, and it was a great opportunity for Duda to catch up to him, but he played against Praggnanandhaa, and he was unable to beat him. They also went into Armageddon, which ended in a draw, but Pragg had the black pieces, so Pragg wins the match after all. And also, before I ended the video, I would just like to show you one very nice position. It was posted on Twitter by David Lada. So this is the position. If you guys are interested in an extra puzzle, I thought you guys might be, because it's truly a nice one. He said, I was breaking my head over this position during my lunch break. It's mate in 2 for white, obviously. So yeah, that's the position. Try and solve it. I will not give you the answer. If you are able to solve it yourselves, because it's really nice, then you are allowed to comment on it in the comment section below. But don't just spoil it for everyone if you didn't solve it yourselves. So yeah, that's the game and a little bit of info and a nice extra puzzle for you guys to enjoy. Hope you enjoyed that as well. I would like to thank Harry Barton, Mariusz Klimek, Francis Air, Carmen Polifronio, and Sinister Pawn for your contribution to my channel. Thank you a lot. I really appreciate it. As usual, you can check 2 of my previous videos here. Thank you all for watching, and I will see you soon, continuing the coverage of this wonderful event until it finishes. So thank you all. I will see you soon, and have an excellent rest of your day.